And joining us later on are two ARC alumni for a panel discussion of their experiences in the fellowship and where they are now. We'll have time for questions during and at the end. We'll do our best to monitor questions in the chat and pepper them in while appropriate. I'll also introduce before we begin our communications manager, Dominica Good, will be joining us today as your Zoom host and keeping us on top of things. You want to say hi, Dominica?
Hello, folks. Happy to be here, and welcome. Thanks for your interest in ARC.
Domenica helps us so much behind the scenes of the program. Hopefully, you'll see her a little bit next year if you're one of our fellows. All right. Keep it moving. About Boston Impact Initiative. If you are not familiar with us, we are a nonprofit impact investment fund based in Roxbury, Mass. We've been deploying capital into businesses and communities traditionally excluded from finance for over a decade. And we have a focus on three things: community ownership, climate resilience, and shared governance and power. We also recently, last year, became a certified CDFI, which means we're accountable to the communities we serve and not just to investors. And ARC Fellowship is one of the ways that we're building the field. And it's not just investing in businesses, but developing the next generation of people who move capital. And I want to start with the why because it does matter deeply. There is no shortage of talented, visionary people who want to move capital differently, who are designing funds rooted in their communities, in indigenous sovereignty, in worker ownership, in keeping land out of speculative markets. People who understand that finance is not neutral and who are ready to build something better. But as we know, the capital markets were not designed with these types of folks in mind. And the pipeline for who gets to be a fund manager is quite narrow. And the assumptions about what readiness looks like for this work are often wrong. And the result is that some of the most important field building work and fund building work happening in this country is happening without the infrastructure and support that it deserves. And so ARC exists to change that, not just by teaching curriculum, but by holding a community of practitioners who know that the work of unlocking capital for communities uh, is deeply relational and it's political and it's deeply human. So, yes, we design and build funds here, but what we're primarily focused on is building this supportive community around everyone who comes into our program. All right, a little bit more into the nuts and bolts of the ARC Fellowship. So, first of all, ARC stands for Advancing Regenerative Capital. There's some arguments that it should have been Advancing Restorative Capital, but I think that's the same values, different words. It's BII's flagship education and field building program. It's an 8-month experience for emerging fund managers. You will get tools, frameworks, coaching, and of course, community to design and manage a fund that is both financially rigorous, sustainable, and justice oriented. We focus specifically on integrated capital models, which means understanding how to blend grants, loans, equity, and recoverable grants into a capital stack that actually fits your community's needs. You'll work on everything from investment thesis to governance to fundraising and legal structure, and you'll do it alongside a cohort of peers who are in it with you, and also tap into the larger alumni network. All right, and this is a lovely picture of kind of where we're at right now. We just completed our annual impact survey and report. It was published recently. I mean, you can read about the 29 launched funds so far and our 90 fund manager graduates that have come through over 5 cohorts now. And this cohort this fall will be number 6. So, who should apply and who is this for? So, you might be sitting there in pre-raise. Maybe you have a clear vision, but you haven't quite launched yet. You might be early stage, you've launched, but are still figuring out your capital stack. You might be a cooperative developer, a community land trust organizer, a longtime movement leader. We have many of those here to think about a fund vehicle to really supercharge and take that next level in your work. Chasing grants isn't fun, isn't it? Is it? Like, and that's why I originally made the leap into impact investing is how can I work on the capital problem to really lift all ships and stop fighting with your allies for grant pools, man. So anyway, what we're looking for when you get here is not a perfect pitch deck or to have everything figured it out. We're looking for mission alignment, community rootedness, and genuine readiness to do the deep work of fund design. And your lived experience and leadership in your community are qualifications. They are not just nice to have. And a few things I want to be explicit about. You do not need to already have a fund launched. Applicants can be in the design or early launch phase, and your fund doesn't have to be structured as a nonprofit. It could be a for-profit, it could be a hybrid, it could be a fiscal sponsorship. You could be a VC fund trying to tap into that DAF money. You can join the club, it'll be great. All of you are welcome. And we're really looking for, like, in terms of readiness, are you ready to launch within the next 12 months? Do you have the beginnings of what you need around you? And I often tell people they are too early when I ask who is on your advisory board. Like, that's like the main tilling question. So get a board of advisors around you, get a community around you, and start writing down the partnerships that you already have, even if there's no firm commitment. Um, And we will have some speakers on today. They're joining us in a few minutes too. I forgot to mention that. We've got some alums. So before we get to this slide, I want to get to here. So what you'll get, we have called what the four pillars, four trees, whatever you want to call them. We don't like pillars sometimes. So you get a systems-based curriculum. It's grounded in complex adaptive systems theory. We focus on justice-centered investing. We do some personal reflection. It's good to know what your relationship to capital and power has been in your own life before you step into the role of managing capital for large swaths of people. And of course, integrated capital design. Our curriculum was originally designed by our founder, Deborah Fries, was a prominent Tufts professor. She is a global impact investor. She's currently working on the Palestine Impact Initiative nowadays. And we are just thrilled to be able to carry on the torch and continuously evolve that curriculum. It gets bigger every year. You have access to it like a library. And we've got a hands-on capstone process. You'll develop and present your fund thesis. It's more of like a celebration. We're not like ponying you around. You get to use that time as most useful for you. And as far as coaching and technical assistance, we have a whole bench of internal consultants. Some folks have been on long-term contract for a really long time that have supported our work. And we're also always adding to that bench of pro bono and low bono services with partners like our partners Foley Hoag, who's our legal partners, among many others. And of course, what is the biggest benefit of all of this? Repeatedly, our fellows say it's these real lasting relationships that they build with their peers. And increasingly now, we're always creating more ways for that alumni engagement. We have some exciting announcements to make later in the fall about some upgrades to our tech infrastructure to enable that engagement. All right. So talk a little bit about the fellowship phases, a little bit how the year is structured. Program runs September 2026 to April 2027, kind of like school. Also, those of us with children, it's built around lives, and I think just the natural rhythm of the year. That is a big change. We experimented a lot with timing, and this seems to work well for the rhythm of life. Phase one, we dig into systems change, investment thesis, fund design. We'll have some great speakers throughout from our alumni network and also thought leaders in the field, service providers, folks in in philanthropy and folks who manage the deaths and all of the types of capital we're trying to unlock. We get to hear from them too. Phase two is our deep dive period, and this is when we start to have less frequent but longer sessions specifically on fundraising. We start with examples of good pitches and best practices. Then we bring in the funder perspective. And then at the very end, we bring in a group of alumni who actually do their own demo pitches for you to learn from. And those folks are all available to you. And then after your deep dive period, hopefully you're in wonderful shape to start crafting, hopefully what is your best pitch deck ever that you can use in the real world. And be in rockin' shape for your capstone. Everyone gets about 10 minutes, um, and it's quite an exercise. It's like friendly Shark Tank. So, primarily we meet, especially in phase one, virtual bi-weekly sessions, 2 hours, sometimes 2.5 if we have to accommodate a lot of speakers and an activity. Um, and so the true cost of this program we've estimated is 60 to 70K. We charge 10. We're a nonprofit. We're working all the time to try and make it affordable. We never want the cost of the program to be a barrier, all else things being aligned. So we do offer partial scholarships, flexible payment plans, and if you're like, oh man, I need some help making a fundraising plan to cover this cost, we're happy to support your journey, letters of support. If we can think of anybody that we know that would be good to tap that could sponsor you, we'll help you in how we can. All right. And I just want to say one more thing about what makes ARC different before we welcome on our alumni speakers. We have one of the most valuable parts of the live sessions, I think, are these things called strategy councils. And this is 30 minutes where you come with your issue, a decision point, or like, hey, how does this land? Um, and everybody gets an opportunity to do that throughout the fellowship maybe multiple times because we're also adding additional drop-in council sessions that are also open to the alumni network. And everyone's just loving this. We're excited to do more of that. Um, so we believe in building your fund in public, having the most support you can. We know iteration is not failure, and having community around you that understands makes all the difference. So we just recently graduated the class of 2026. There are these 10 funds here. You can find them on our website. I'll drop some links for you after I'm done talking. And you can look at that QR code there. It is the recording of our entire capstone celebration. Uh, it was just all the feels because they all came so far from walking into this program, many of whom did, had the shell of pitch decks or some that needed major revisions and their confidence in the language that they're using and clarity on their structure is just wonderful. Chef's kiss. Do give it a read and a view. And also, our applications just open on Monday. Um, you can reach, I'll drop a link to the application shortly. I couldn't make a QR code in time for the presentation. Please do check out our 10 graduating funds. Particularly, I'll call out the People's Network for Land and Liberation. They are a consortium of who are they up to 10 now? It's at least six. Community organizations that are organized around the solidarity economy and they pool funds and make crazy investments nationally. They'll just go in and drop a couple $1 million. There you go, build your co-op. Though that's more on like the radical innovative side. And then we also have some other examples like More Philanthropy. They're a strategic, philanthropic advisory firm and they manage DAFs. And they were like, it's time for us to manage our own fund. People already trust us to do this work. Like, we're able to get some money and let's walk what we talk in our own investments. Another one wonderful to look at, the Resilient Southern Land Fund, is a collaboration between the Croatan Institute and the Rural Beacon Initiative out in the Southeast, and they focus on taking agricultural lands out of the speculative market. Um, and primarily selling them and keep controlling it forever for farmers of color and other marginalized folks. So check them out. Everyone has a story, incredible, amazing teams. I just feel honored to work with every year, and I'm really excited about this next cohort. All right, I think that is it for me. Dominica, how are we doing with our guest speakers? Hi,
Um,
Jonathan. I see you. Hi, Elaine. I see you as well. Oh, I was seeing your face and I didn't read the name. And look at you with your name on your background so we know who you are. That's a good one. All right. Welcome to our guest speakers. I need to exit my screen so I can see what I'm doing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, everyone, for sitting through my spiel. So happy now to welcome Jonathan Ward from the Fund for Jobs Worth Owning and our recent graduating cohort. And we also have Elaine Rasmussen from, where are you nowadays, Elaine? And which cohort were you in? Oh, I'm sorry, you're muted.
I am based in the Twin Cities here in Minnesota, and I am from the first cohort.
Oh, wonderful. So since you already got started, Elaine, thank you so much for joining us today to connect with folks that are interested. Um, can you tell us a little bit about your fund now, your journey through the ARC program, and yeah, where were you and where are you now? Give us a little picture of what your work is.
So I'll run through the ARC, pun intended. We weren't called ARC when we started. So the program has evolved and changed in so many ways, in all the best of ways. But I'll tell you where I started. So where I started was I had this idea of I had a background in finance, but I walked away from finance, had a full career in marketing and communications, but through the role that I had in philanthropy, found myself touching impact investing and being in a circle where, because of my finance background, I was one of the few people in philanthropy at the time, this was going back to like 2010, that understood this language of impact investing. And so from there, really felt that the way people were talking about impact investing was the bare minimum, and that I saw that it was an opportunity where this type of capital could be exponentially unlocked and exponentially more impactful than how it was currently being leveraged. And so from there, I actually was a JEI fellow, the Just Economy Institute fellow, and my goal was to understand the mechanics of launching a fund. At the time, I was also in the first cohort of that, and that wasn't what it was. So by the time, well, it was a great experience, it wasn't what I was looking for. And so when this opportunity came up, I participated in that. So at the time, I had just an idea. I knew that I really wanted to look at hybrid capital. How could we support small businesses? And when I say small businesses, those businesses under $1 million in revenue, to because the first $1 million is the hardest. So how can we leverage all types of capital, debt, equity, and um, debt, equity, and grants to be able to support small businesses led by people of color and rural based businesses. So from there, I went through the program. I think it was 16 months, 18 months. We had a much longer program and made
Oh,
really great
yes, we
connections.
we're like, that's a whole degree. We gotta make that
Yeah,
smaller.
yeah. So very different, very different. And was able to come out of the program with definitely more concise idea of what the fund was going to be. Then there comes the practicality. It's kind of like you graduate college and then you see how the real world is. You can learn all the things in theory, but then when you have to go out, you are hit up against the reality of whatever your ecosystem is, right? And with me being in the Midwest and a lot of capital concentrated on the West Coast, there was a whole nother level of work and understanding that I had to do. But again, BII has been such a great partner. I think I personally probably haven't utilized BII as much as I probably could have or can. We still have our fund. We've made 6 investments to entrepreneurs. We are currently we have finished our pilot, and now it's a matter of we then ran into capacity issues. So we had a human capital problem, and that human capital problem was related to people want to support the investments. They don't want to support the operations to make these kinds of investments go, at least not in my community. So that's a challenge that I still face, especially on top of all of, I'm sure you've heard Twin Cities, Minneapolis being in the news so much over the last 6 months. And then, of course, as a COVID and with the murder of George Floyd. So a lot of the discretionary capital that's available that's not for investing has really gone towards mutual aid and rapid response. So we're still clawing our way out of trying to find dollars to support the ecosystem work and the operational work, because as many of you know, or you're going to learn, the 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 cost of success is more on the human capital side than it is on the actual investing side. Once you invest the human capital to support the founders, if that's what you're doing, you're working with small businesses, is done. The rest of the investing part and the paying back part is easier. It's way easier. But getting the money, because this is really requires a lot of, it's high touch work. And so that high touch has to be paid for, and it needs to be paid for at a living wage. And so that making that sell, particularly in our region, is, while it's good, the people love it in theory, they don't support it by putting the dollars to it. So I'll end there, but so excited that the work is continuing, that BII is continuing this program. I think it's very valuable in all its iterations, and I'm happy to be a resource or a shoulder to cry on for anybody who goes, and there's lots of tears, but who has gone through the program or is planning on going through the program.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Next year, we are launching our mentorship program. If you are interested or have time for that, we'll do some connecting at the ARC Summit this fall, and more to come there. And Mr. Jonathan Ward, so happy to have you today. And just tickled that we get to continue to work together. Jonathan helped me start my career at the ICA group from which this fund was birthed, and I cut my teeth on cooperative development and all things economic democracy. And so, being that I know you very well, I know that your fund was seeded and started years ago. So, if you could tell us more about where were you at? Having already an established fund that made you want to join this program at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Siobhan. Always good to be with you, to be
Oh
working
yeah,
with.
introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm Jonathan Ward. I'm the director of lending at Fund for Jobs Worth Owning, which is one heck of a mouthful. But as Siobhan alluded to, we are a loan fund for worker ownership, and we invest in worker cooperatives, in particular in the care economy, worker-owned home care agencies that help folks live in their homes, and on the other end of the spectrum, worker-owned child care centers. So we work in the care economy, and we also help businesses in all industries transition to become worker-owned as worker cooperatives, and that's our buyout financing type of program. And yeah, we have been around for a little bit, but gosh, this program really helped us shine ourselves up. You know, we started in basically 2020, and our fund was kind of part-time. You know, in the beginning, I work across a couple different organizations, ICA Group, that helped create the fund, and you know, we were lucky to get this equity grant to start up. And we could slowly kind of lend out of that. We really do a lot of coaching and technical assistance with borrowers to do financial coaching in addition to the loans. So we could kind of tailor those products and figure out the right way to structure our capital. And, you know, we had the luxury of this equity foundation to be able to do that. Enter in 2025, and we needed to keep growing. And that required us to get connected, to raise capital, to learn how to do all of that. And thank goodness we found BII and ARC to learn those skills. You know, to learn the skills to become from an aspiring, trying to do good loan fund to maybe semi-established, and um, BII is so good at all of the different stuff that we needed, whether it's talking to investors, refining your pitch, building your portfolio, managing the risk, and growing the organization. We had been around, had done 20 loans, but we were real rough on all of those different things. Again, largely because we hadn't needed to raise capital in the beginning, but boy, do we now. So I'll tell you what I really benefited from, in the program. One is, again, just telling our story. We had a semblance of a pitch deck, in the beginning. We kind of knew the things to say, but, we're not saying them well. We're saying, I think, a lot of the wrong things that did not set us up successfully. And one of the great things about ARC is you just get to tell your story over and over again. Each meeting, you're introducing yourself in breakout rooms or to the full group or to, the speakers that come up, you're telling your story. And then towards the end of the program, it is starting to work on your pitch deck and, practice it here and practice it there. And then we got to practice it at Capstone. So I think we came up with 5 different versions of our slides, in the past 2 or 3 months of it, and they're in a such better place. I think I'm confusing people less. I'm saying the wrong things less, and there's always ways to improve. But I think we're doing a much better job than we had been. So learning to tell our story, because we do great work, but we got to like connect with people so we can keep being able to do great work. The other thing that I just want to underscore is all of the peer advising connections in the program. Oh my gosh, that was another one of my favorite parts. Again, BII knows how to do this stuff. So, and Siobhan, you were always telling me to do it. You said, connect with our director of lending, our investment, managers, connect with the folks that are managing our portfolio, that are raising capital. And you get to have those connections, for half an hour here, an hour there, and you get to come into them with like the I'm learning, I'm a student, hat on too, and to ask the things that you normally wouldn't when you're talking with a potential investor and talking with other folks, to get feedback about your organization. And we ate that up and grew so much by being able to talk to all these smart people at BII about where we were and then get advice on the next things that we would do. Always so welcomed into those conversations. We felt like a priority in all of those. Siobhan was always saying, go connect. And then when we actually did connect, folks took care of us, reached out to us after sessions and see, how else they could help. And BII is extremely well connected. We also benefited from getting introduced to other people through BII too. Hey, do you know this person over there and this person over there? And whether it was Siobhan or Lubna or, other folks there, they would make those connections for us that we need at this time when we're trying to get our name out. So, it's beyond telling our story. It's the connections, it's the learning, and to be able to have access. We even got to talk to a lawyer that probably saved us $10,000 on like costs and updating our offering memorandum because they could kind of cut through the selling us and just give us this 30-minute of advising on how to on what we needed to take on more capital from it too. So super enjoyed the program. I cannot recommend it enough. I think if you got one of the different things that I mentioned out of it, that would be well worth all of your time, and expense of being part of it. And it's just great to be back here too. It feels like, warm and nice to come back because we did these meetings all the time, like every week or every other week, and in a group like this, and Siobhan at the helm. So it feels
I'll
good.
miss you.
I'll miss you too. It feels good to be in community, like this. So thank you for letting me share that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your introductions and giving us a picture of what your program experience was like. You can see how the experience has evolved from 2020 to where it is now. And I think we found a happy medium between 18 months and 4 nowadays. Definitely. Let's see, back to you, Elaine. Just wondering, I know it's been quite a few years since you were in the program itself. So much exciting work happening in Minnesota and particularly the Twin Cities. I was able to come out there for with Black Cooperatives Conference. It was amazing. And we learned about all of your reparations work there and all these funds popping up all over the place. Amazing place to do that kind of work. So 5 years later, is there anything that you're still trying to figure out and something that your program at least helped you name, even if it's not completely evolved yet?
Yeah, one of the things that we're figuring out, I was just talking to a potential investor a couple of weeks ago, and we're coming up with a certain problem. So here's the other thing, like you can build a product and then sometimes it turns out like nobody wants it, right? So I'm like, right now, we feel like there's a three-pronged situation. We either um, we have potential investees that need way more capital than we have to give. So our fund is really looking at $75,000 or less, because that's our biggest capital gap in our community, in our ecosystem, is that 20 to 75,000. We don't have a lot of folks that can give you money at that stage, at least not without like 20% interest or 18% interest. Like our CDFIs in town, the lowest rate that you probably get will be about 15, 16%. And that's very few and far in between, which is horrible, right? So we're like, okay, so what we're seeing is people really need, like we have one founder who came through our capital readiness accelerator. He needs a minimum of $200,000 to buy out the $300,000 CDFI loan that he's paying 18% on, right? So we don't have that kind of capital. The other thing that we're facing is, as from a culture perspective, people still are reticent of getting loans, right? Not understanding that the reason why is because you don't have a plan to pay back the loan. But we have a program that's tied to our fund. Like you go through this capital readiness accelerator, we're not going to even talk to you about money until you go through that accelerator, because in the accelerator we identify, hey, how much money can you take on? What's it going to take to pay it back? And what's the infrastructure that's needed to make sure that you're well positioned, right? The third problem is the businesses are too small and there's so much that they need, like that they need to get to that level. So that's a three-pronged problem that we're experiencing as far as finding investees. Now, on the other side, I talked about the capital, but on the other side of it is, I forgot my train of thought, but really wanting to have the grant capital I know what I was going to say. So now going back to like the operational pieces. So for us, we're looking at, to solve that problem, what we're doing is, what can be the mechanism, what can be a financial instrument that we can use? So we're looking at providing lines of credit and purchase order financing. So telling our founders who maybe don't want to necessarily get straight into a loan of like, hey, we're going to vet you. We're going to have this capital ready. So if you get a purchase order and you need capital to be able to finance fulfilling that purchase order, then we will provide you with that financing, right? And so it's short term for us. We're not in it for a long haul, but trying to come up with these alternative ways that feel more palatable to the founders to be able to get the capital need. The last thing that I'll say is, back to your other question about what are the resources that we need? I think one of the biggest challenges that we found is the legal setup and offering memorandum. I felt we were getting very conflicted information. So while BII was really great on providing legal, it also has to be reviewed by a Minnesota lawyer. And so when we got to that review process, that's where things started to break down. And part of that, I think, was because our legal community, as it relates to investing, still don't understand this work. So they were telling us all these things that we couldn't do. And I'm like, of course we can do them. Like, that's not true. I know that we can do that, because what you're talking about is tradition versus actually legal. Those are two different things. And so getting them to, so we've spent so much time in going back and forth with lawyers. Like, I'm actually kind of burnt out from it. And so I've had to like set this down, because I haven't had like the emotional capacity to continue the work, right? I can't even get to the offering memorandum, because I literally, like, I've had long conversations with Deborah about this, like, and the work, because to your point, Jonathan, we can't afford to pay a lawyer. when you get pro bono work, you're getting pro bono work. So you're the last on the rung, you're not prioritized. So then I'm waiting like 2 or 3 months for somebody to get back to me on a simple,
Mm,
stupid question, right?
mhm.
So that because I'm waiting, I have to have this Minnesota review of any offering memorandum that might be done by put together by the BII legal support that we're getting.
Those are good points, Elaine. And I just want to say we're also working on it. Why don't you come talk to us, Elaine?
Listen, I've been busy, girl. I've had my own
Right?
other. We're getting into a new building. We've got a huge operational raise that so I
Cool.
it's a lot, and I think and we've had so I offered I hired a fellow, and this is like all she's working on, but also that person's part time, and then we also had some issues with some of our borrowers. So just getting them, we decided to invest our time in them and not necessarily working on the fund so that we can make sure that they were solid, that they were secure. And
Sure.
now that we think we've got them there and we've had 2 people pay us off. So like that's been amazing, an amazing metric because our whole idea was to be evergreen, that as people repay the money, we can get the funds back out again as opposed
Absolutely.
to some others. So we're going to be calling you. There was a lot of stuff that
Absolutely.
had to be fixed.
And something new we're going to start this year also is these quarterly peer advisory calls open to both the ARC network, and we're also in discussions with the National Resist and Build Network, which are folks that are super aligned, but maybe earlier on in their, their fund journey and even just learning the language and stuff. So it should be very promising and fun. Before we get to Jonathan, similar question, right? Like are there things that you're still working and thinking through? And of course there always are, right? We're never promising that you go through this program and magical, your fund is perfect, like it's just gonna rain. Like there's still so much work after that, but it's on your building your strong foundations and being confident out in the world with your materials and what you're doing in your team. Before I kick it over to Jonathan, though, I am reminded that I did not share this important part about our related First Mover Fund. It's a $5 million justice-aligned catalytic capital vehicle that invests in the graduates of the ARC program to help with things like legal fee barriers. We gave a grant to, here's an example, Cross Impact Capital that covered the cost of an audit that was holding them back from unlocking additional capital. So, like, addressing these little leverage points that like no one else funds that's preventing you from taking the next step. That's exactly what we fund. And you can have a look at this on our website. I believe we have a website for that, right, Dominica? And we are currently evaluating the second round of investments. The idea is to deploy 500K a year into ARC funds. We've raised 1.5 already and we're still working on it, but 500K a year. Um, and the goal of the entire art network, like us, we say we want to mobilize $100 million by 2030. The goals of the ARC funds are more like 500 million. I just say just 10x it, make it a billion. Look at them already surpassing these goals. And they have collectively, we had a huge jump from 2024. They have collectively deployed 60 million already. Like we're there. We're gonna knock that out of the park. So, thank you so much, Elaine, for joining us too. And so I'll kick it off to you again before we open it up. Can you still see my screen?
No.
Okay, cool. That is just wonderful, just fine. You saw my screen earlier though, right?
Mm,
Okay,
Earlier,
great.
yes, not during the First
Or
Mover
you
Fund.
did not during the first mover fund at all?
No.
Well, that's silly because thought I was showing you the slide. I will send everyone the slide deck after this. Um, so
I was following along what you were saying.
great. I'm glad it was still effective without visuals.
Yeah, you want me to talk about kind of where we are right now, still what we're still working on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
And
uh,
any advice for folks that are in the early stages thinking of applying?
I mean, do it again. It's like the benefits will outweigh any cost that you can come up with a reason for not doing it. Assuming you take advantage of it all too. I guess you could sign up and not show up to any session or not engage with any of the peer advisors or not ask for any connections, and then it wouldn't be worth your time. But assuming that you will do the things in the program, it's only going to help you get to the next place. I think where we are, so we've had our eyes open. We're a little shinier now in terms of our pitch. We're still beholden to the realities of a small fund and trying to do it all. There is raising capital, there is deploying capital, which requires building a pipeline. And there's a chicken and an egg between raising capital and having a pipeline too. And that's complicated to manage. And then there is taking care of the portfolio that you have, because even though companies initiatives were healthy at the time of investment, things happen, and you got to be able to respond to it. And I'm sure anyone that is at the point of thinking of growing a small fund or starting up a fund is just thinking about all these different things that they're going to need to become really good at. And I think that's where we are. And I'll give you an example. So as far as raising capital, certainly because of the program, we know how to approach that, how to talk, and what to say, what not to say, how to start to get connected with folks. But there's a lot more there. We need to learn about the right way to talk about ourselves to different audiences. I feel like having a pitch deck and having maybe a version of the pitch deck that you send and one that you present, that's one level to the game. Having different ways to talk about yourself based on who are you going to interact with and what they know and what you're trying to accomplish, and being able to change really quickly on the fly. That's a skill that we're looking to develop. Capital planning, raising capital takes a long amount of time. Some folks move quicker, some folks move very slow. You have to learn to line that up to the pipeline that you're building. I think there's an art to that, an art to the ask of making sure we're getting grants alongside our capital in order to, be able to cover our operating cost, our advising costs, in addition to having
We're
that.
not trying to charge 20% interest.
We're not trying to do that, so we need to have some grant. Exactly. Right. So there is really an art to this model, and that's something that, again, I was picking the brains of the different peer advisors about too. But there's a lot more to go, and I think Elaine was talking about the difficulty is raising that first kind of bit of money, and for us, we're at a place where we have about 3 million, 4 million in assets and an operating budget of about 400,000. That's a tough spot to be in a fund too, because you're not self-sufficient with the money that you bring in from your loan fund. And to then get to that place where you are sustainable and able to maybe have more folks in your team, that managing that growth period, for us too, that's a lot of work, and we're going to need to get sharp on that. So I guess I'm grateful to stay connected with this group and be part of this community. Because we're going to continue to face new challenges, and we're going to need folks to reach out to. So that's where we are in the next chapter.
The network is here for you, and we keep the learning going. And we try and create touch points however you can engage, hop in. All right, and with that, I noticed that we are at time, but I'm happy to stick around for additional minutes to answer any questions you may have about the program. Jonathan, thank you so much for joining us today. I don't know if you have an extra couple minutes, great. If you don't, I know we're over time, but I will hang around. Any questions what do you think, Jonathan? You got 5 minutes?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Okay, cool. Any questions either for Jonathan or I? I did notice a question earlier posed about what's our policy about non-US based funds? From what I read there, all right, so here's the key thing, right? If you are based in Canada or somewhere else, none of our legal advice applies to you. And that is kind of a big deal. However, if you already have legal support and folks in where you are located, that is a big plus. Just accept that all of our legal resources and curriculum will not apply to you. Also saying time zone is a thing. So yes, we do focus primarily in US and Canada. It sounds like your fund is US based, but invests internationally. We
Oh,
haven't really had any. Yeah, is that true?
yeah, the issue is that we kind of established the fund in the USA.
Yeah.
but we are trying to solely focus on the investment in the African continent.
Yeah.
So in that
Um,
case, yeah, we would like
yeah,
that.
doing investment and just focusing on an international community,
Right.
that's still community based. It's just not on this continent. I'd certainly be interested in learning more.
So just correct me if I'm wrong, like to clarify, in that case, we are not qualified or eligible for the arch.
I would say you are eligible because you are
Okay,
US based.
okay, I see. I see. Highly appreciate.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. And just so folks know, this is our one and only info session that we'll have. I see another question there. We will also provide this recording, all the slide decks, including the slides I did not show today. And I will be having regular office hours. We'll send a scheduling link if you would like to join me one-on-one and just talk about the program. Friend Kizito, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Siobhan. Yeah. So I just have a question for Jonathan around like the community piece within like the ARC Fellowship. How relevant did you see that during your cohort, and what has been the impact of that relationship years down the line?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And you mean for other folks that are, that I'm in the class of 2026 with?
Yeah.
Yeah, there. So, I'm just fresh out of high school, in that time. So I'm not sure what'll happen years down the line. I know that over the, months of the ARC Fellowship, that felt like a family that I was talking with every week, every 2 weeks, and became deeply supportive of one another, learned a lot about they were doing. What do we have these strategy councils that were really cool where we would ask the group for feedback and get feedback from our fellow cohort members. And, it was always loving and respectful and, delivered in the right way. So that was great. And, I have stayed in touch over the last, I guess, month with a couple of folks. But I'm really just at the beginning of that. There are a couple alumni events coming up that I'm going to participate at, and I'll probably connect with folks in those spaces, as well. But I can just speak to within that the week to week or every other week sessions, you really got to know the people that were in the cohort.
Thanks, Jonathan. And I will say, we're looking forward to connecting you with everybody in the ARC network this September, where we will be flying in folks nationally, and it should be really fun. It's in Middle Massachusetts. Come see the trees. Well, folks, it was a pleasure spending time with you today. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Also, Elaine, thank you for what you contribute to this community all the time. And we're looking forward to seeing what's next in the alum network. Don't forget, applications are open. The links are in there. We'll send a follow-up. You can schedule some time with me if you like. And we appreciate you very much. Thank you for being interested in this work.
Thanks so much, Siobhan.
Thank you.